Okay, so today is Wednesday,
All day.
and the third day of Channukah, so Zayin Kislev, and the 5th of December. And this is the fourth time we're learning this mimer. We've made good progress, but we still have some more to go here. And what we covered yesterday was, we began to cover the idea that mitzvahs are devushim, that they are enclothing the person, and is particularly enclothing the soul, meaning that they fit exactly the shape of the soul. The way that when we talk about shape, we talk about form, we're not talking about that it has a physical shape. To the makeup of the person. So we have a divine soul and an intermediate soul, which is called the intellectual soul. And then we have the animal soul. And the purpose of the Torah is to, first of all, feed the divine soul. And then the divine soul's task is to explain to the animal soul why it should dedicate itself and lend itself to consuming its fat in order to serve God, in order to do mitzvot. And if somebody asks, what's the reason for this? Why can't the divine soul by itself lead life? Why do you need an animal soul in the first place? So the deep reason is that the animal soul is much stronger in a certain sense than the divine soul. And it's needed in order to survive. Meaning the animal soul has instincts that keep the person alive, keep us alive, and ensure survival. The divine soul is, on the other hand, very strong in spirituality. It understands in spirituality. So if it were to be given the reins, the person would immediately probably burn out of this world.
Cease to eat.
He'd cease to eat. He'd forget about eating. He'd forget about drinking. He'd forget about breathing, maybe even though breathing is something that is maybe more instinctual. But because its initial connection is above, not below, so it's drawn up. So that's why it's likened to love like fire. But the animal soul, its intellect is based in the ground, so it understands about physical existence, it understands about food, it understands about wine, it understands about money, all these things. And so you need the two of them together in order to lead a life that is spiritual, but in the body. Otherwise...
How did David HaMelech exist after he killed his Yetzer?
Okay. So when we say that he killed his Yetzer Hara, what we mean is that he controlled it completely. Meaning that he controlled his animal soul completely. The idea behind it is...
It was subservient.
That it becomes completely subservient, in the sense that it's entirely under the reign of the divine soul. So much so that when we say that he didn't have an animal soul, what we mean to say is that the animal soul didn't get to say anything. Normally, in a person who's at a very high level, the animal soul still has its take on life, and you still hear it, or you still feel it inside of you. But David HaMelech came to a position where this initial instinctual will to survive was not there anymore. But the animal still kept taking care of the body. That's the usual explanation. There's another explanation that when the divine soul is solitarily in the person by itself, it can take over the necessary tasks that the animal soul serves, meaning it can ensure survivability. This we find in the Tanya, that he says that Hillel, the elder, he used to say, I'm going to have compassion on the poor one, where he meant his body, or his animal soul. And basically the divine soul sees the low level of the animal soul, or of the body, and that it has needs. And it takes care of them, but in the way that it thinks it should take care of them, not the way that they think they should be taken care of. And this is like is the highest level of human life possible, where the divine soul, even though its nature is to want to depart the body, it takes on the task of sustaining the body. So that has to happen in a person. There were people in whom this did not happen. That the divine soul was too powerful, and the animal soul was too weak, and so they departed their bodies. They left their bodies. It's called the pashtuta gashmiut. The person has no connection anymore to the physical realm, and he departs. The soul leaves the body. So that's not considered a good level. It's considered a negative thing. The whole point is that in spite of the fact that your whole will is to connect to God, it's called, to be drawn into the body of the king, still you take on the task that God gave you, which is to act in the world. So there were many examples of both directions. The main example of somebody who's actually bittul, the highest sense of bittul is when a person understands that God wants him to have a consciousness, that he wants him to be, in a certain sense, distinct, unique. And that's what Hashem wants. He doesn't want him to be drawn into the infinite and then disappear. On the contrary, he wants him to be here in this world, and only in this world can he be truly unique. So he wants him to function here. The best example of that is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was entirely just a divine soul. There was no animal soul there. And that's why he had a lot of trouble with many things. But even though he himself, he said a few times, take me away from here, in the end he accepted that he has a role, that he has a mission to perform. And so the feeling that the mission was more important than the divine soul getting what it wants, that the uniqueness, that the unique mission that I have is more important than fulfilling the craving of the divine soul, which is to depart the body, that becomes his life's task. That's where in a certain sense, that's where every person has to have some kind of challenge. So his challenge is in overriding the divine soul's want and craving to depart, to ascend higher, and instead to be connected to the world. And then there's an even higher level of that. And it's when he devotes himself to other people and so on. Okay. So all this is we spent the last 3 days talking about. Now we want to understand this whole concept of mitzvos also being like a candle, that they have to have the same shape as the soul itself. And what does it mean in that sense, that it's like a candle? And the point that he's going to start with, and we started yesterday, is that the mitzvos are like a garment that the soul wears. So let's read it from the beginning. Why is the mitzvah called a candle? So the mitzvah is the vehicle through which, the garment through which this whole process occurs, of the divine soul burning and the intellectual soul providing the wick, and the animal soul being drawn up like fuel to burn as it descends into the divine.
Into the light.
Okay. It goes into the light. Basically, it's transformed from liquid, from fat, into something luminous. Why are they called a royal garment? Because basically they're like, when a person performs a mitzvah, he's wearing the garment of the king. It's known that he's connected to the king himself, the king being Hashem, being the Almighty who is infinite. In the same way that the garment changes the way the person acts. The strongest example is, of course, when people are in uniform. When a person is in uniform. So he's treated very differently than if he's in his pajamas. What's the reason? The person is still the same person. Whether he's in his pajamas or whether he's wearing the uniform of a 4-star general, he's still the same person. So it's true there's something about his air that is constant, the character that he has and so on, but people who look at him from the outside and don't know him, they will undoubtedly treat him differently. But the more important point is that not only do others treat him differently, but he treats himself differently. That a person who's in uniform looks at himself and perceives himself. He gives himself an assessment of character and how I should behave and so on that is so different
Deserving
than when
of it.
he's inside his pajamas and about to go to sleep. So the garment changes the way the person acts. So that we call this itlabshut. This is one of the most important principles in Chassidus, which is called enclothement. And it says that there is a relationship between things in the world that we can't say that the garment gives him some new power that he didn't have before. He's exactly the same person. But somehow it causes him to act differently. Another example of enclothement in the world is electricity. So a light bulb that's not connected or not turned on is still the same light bulb as when it is turned on. The electricity doesn't give the light bulb anything new. It's not that it has something that it didn't have there before. The whole picture, call it the vulgar conception of electricity as being electrons moving through wires, that's just something physicists tell people in order to explain to them that there's current or something. In truth, nothing moves. It's not mechanical. There's nothing moving in the wires. There's nothing going on. But everything is acting differently the moment you connect the electricity to it. So the light bulb is still the light bulb, but when you put it into we call it potential difference, then the atoms inside the light bulb begin to emit light. They begin to emit photons. And how they do this, and why they do this, where they get the energy, and so on, is not really a mechanical process, not something moving through it. Rather that the atoms are actually just acting in a different way. So nothing really changed. It's still the same makeup. It still weighs the same before and after. It's still the same thing, except it acts in a different way. So the same thing, a mitzvah is a garment that a person wears. The point of this garment is not to get him to act differently in the sense of be a better person necessarily, but rather that he's able to do things and assume a position that is far beyond his own capabilities, that's not connected to who he is necessarily. A mitzvah is like a short circuit. It's like a way to do something that I wouldn't normally be able to do at all.
So you'd say the garment creates accountability within the human being.
So that's in a uniform. In a mitzvah, it creates not necessarily an accountability, but like a connection. I'm now part of something that's greater than what I normally am. More importantly, here in the sense of the garment of the mitzvah, I'm able to now act in the sense of, the animal soul providing fuel, the intellectual soul. That's where the kavanah is. Like that I have some understanding of what I'm doing, even though it's not the ultimate understanding, it's some understanding, or it's some consciousness of what I'm doing, and the divine soul burning on top like a flame. So it allows the body that before was maybe not so, is not so in tune with this process,
Refined,
to take this process on completely, meaning to be able to act this process out. Nothing changed. I still have the same animal soul, the same intellectual soul, the same divine soul. It's all the same. It's just now acting and functioning in a way that it wasn't able to function before. Okay, so the mitzvah doesn't add anything. It changes, like a garment, it changes the internal workings of my entire constitution. So that's why even if a person is a very good person and he does wonderful things in the world, if he's not doing it as a mitzvah, so there's something lacking. It's like he's not plugged in, or he's plugged into a DC current when he needs an AC current. And he's doing things, but it's not really the full function of what the body can do, of what the human being can do.
If he's not doing it for the sake of the mitzvah,
Right,
if he's
he
not...
doesn't realize that it's a mitzvah. To realize that it's a mitzvah is like turning the light on. You can have everything in place, or even, I wouldn't say that nothing is happening, because when a person does kindness,
giving tzedakah.
he gives tzedakah, but he doesn't know that it's a mitzvah. So he's doing everything there is to do here, but it's like he's working on low voltage for whatever reason. And so at low voltage, not everything is really happening. I mean, he's going through the motions, he's doing the actions, but he's not plugged in. To do a mitzvah is basically to be like plugged in. That's the way we would describe it today. In his day and age, there was no electricity, so we couldn't give this example. So his example was always, are you in uniform? Imagine a soldier. If you've been in the army, and almost everybody in Israel has, you know the difference between when you're in uniform and you're doing things. And a lot of times, especially if you're an officer, you happen to have a day off or whatever, and you still come in, and you still do things, and you come in like on what we call izlachiyan, like in civilian clothing, and you do things. It's not the same. It's very interesting. It's like you're the same. Everybody knows you even, but the moment that you're without the uniform, it's like they don't have to treat you the same way. It's very interesting, and you don't treat yourself the same way. It doesn't have the same urgency or sense of mission or whatever it is. The uniform has a tremendous effect on how you act. So that was the parable in his time, 200 years ago. Okay. So the mitzvah is a makif. It's a garment. It's something that comes from the outside. Again, it's not a garment. You don't wear it. But that's the parable. That's how you understand it. And it connects the body. It's plugged in now into the infinite. In the same way that when a person is wearing his uniform, whatever it is, you can pull the entire person just with a garment, meaning it captures everything, all of who you are. וכן כצרור אבן במרגמה, שעל ידי שצרור בחרת זורקין אותו למעלה יותר. So the example in his time, this is another parable that he uses, is like a collection of stones that you put into a catapult. What's the idea that you put it into a catapult? Because you enclose, the catapult was a garment at the end, it was some kind of cloth, whatever it was. And because you put all the stones together into the same end of the catapult, the hand or the cup, whatever it was, you could move everything together at the same time. You're moving. Whereas, if a person is just doing it without the mitzvah, so it could be that he's doing the action, but there's disconnects. They're not fully, he's not clothed from top to bottom in the action that he's doing. That's the great thing about it. When I command you to do it, your whole body goes into it. Your whole essence goes into it. But if you're not commanded to do it, so then, let's say a person is...
Avraham Avinu and Bris Milah.
Okay, I keep thinking of the army because it's really the best example of how uniforms affect people. But when a person's not on duty, he can still do things, like I said. Let's say you're not on duty and you want to do some favor for somebody. Suddenly, if in the middle you get a phone call and they tell you, come quickly, I have to do something else. So you might say, okay, I was going to do so-and-so, but now I have this other thing that I need to do, so I'll take a detour, it'll take me some more time, and so on. But when you're on duty and your home calls and says, you have to come back because A, B, and C. If it's not a life or death emergency, and even then I'm not sure that you can. So no, you have to stick to what you're supposed to do. Your entire being is into it. You can't think of something else. Another example of it is that in the time of King David, the people in the army would give a get, which was a divorce paper, to their wife on condition.
Also in the Second World War.
They did people signed these things. And what it meant was that if I don't come back, you're divorced from now. Basically, it was a divorce on condition. The reason was that you don't always know if they'll find the body, if you'll be able to bring it back, if they'll be able to identify it, who knows. So to care for those that you leave behind, so you signed the will, you signed the divorce paper, everything was in order so that you could go. The main point wasn't really to provide for those behind you, but rather to give peace of mind for the person who's fighting, so that he knows that whatever happens, it's okay. I mean, he won't be worried about what will happen. Of course, he'll be worried, but at least he won't be worried about most of the difficult things that occur over time. Eventually, people get over somebody getting killed, but if 5 years later you still can't get married, So the woman can't get married again, or she can't get the bank account, whatever it is. That's worse in some ways. So, because people want their lives to go on, you don't want somebody else's
Yeah.
life to stop because your life stopped. That's the main thing of a person who thinks about others. He says, my life is my life, it's very important to me, and so on, but it doesn't have to, the world doesn't revolve around it, and things will continue after I'm not here. So, they used to do it for the peace of mind. In the same way, what that did was, it allowed them to fully immerse themselves in what they were doing, to fully free themselves from any other obligations that they have. In the same way, when a person is doing a mitzvah, the mitzvah itself gives him the strength to completely immerse himself in what he's doing and to say, no, I can't deal with something else right now. I'm now in the middle of a mitzvah. The only reason that I could be patur from a mitzvah, from a commandment,
Bigger mitzvah.
is it because there's another commandment that's greater than that in some way, or that cannot be done by somebody else, and that what I'm doing can be done by somebody else. But in general, ha'osek b'mitzvah patur min ha'mitzvah. But in general, a person who is in the middle of performing a mitzvah, he's not obligated to perform another mitzvah. He has to finish what he's doing now. So in that sense, he's completely encompassed. He's completely immersed, like enclosed within the action that he's doing. And so everything is participating. The whole character structure, from the top of the divine soul all the way down to the oil of the animal soul, is all immersed in this action.
So how does that correspond to interrupting Shema for call up to the Torah?
You can't. How can you talk in the middle of Shema? If they call you, they have to call somebody else. If you're in the middle of Shema.
They have to call somebody else?
Of course. In the middle of Shema, you can't. In other places, there's ways to get around it somehow, but from Baruch She'amar and on, until you finish Tachnun, you can't.
So it's considered a greater mitzvah, saying the Shema.
Yeah, I don't know how much going on on the other Torah is even a mitzvah compared to this. This is mamish d'oraisa. In any case, הכלל שכל בחינת מקיף הוא עלה למעלה. The point is that everything that's called a makif, the point of something called a makif, the surrounding light, is that it elevates you. What's another example of a makif, a surrounding light? The knowledge that I don't have. And the knowledge that I don't have, the Torah that I don't know, is surrounding me right now. It's like something that I need to get to. When I study it, I will ascend. I come higher, to a higher place. ולכן לובשים טלית ותפילין קודם התפילה. Why do we put on a talis, a prayer shawl, and tefillin before we daven? להמשיך בחינת מקיף למעלה, להעלות את נפש הבהמית בתפילה כנודע שאין התחתון עולה למעלה, עד שיורדת תחילה הרע מלמעלה. So the whole point of wrapping ourselves in a prayer shawl and a talis is because it's giving us the sense of the makif that's above us, the surrounding light above us. So to pray, the problem with prayer is an internal act. There's even debate between the different halachic rulings about whether it's a mitzvah in the first place. It's mitzvah d'Rabbanan for sure, but it's not clear that it's a mitzvah d'Oraisa. So you have to give it some kind of command, as it were, to raise it even higher. So what we do is we put a talis on. What's the point of the talis? Talis is, I have a tzitzis anyway. So I put a garment on that is d'Oraisa. The garment that's from the Torah, because I have to put the tzitziot on because the Torah tells me. So it's a higher level. So I'm performing something that's higher. It's giving me a boost up. The same thing with the tefillin that I put on. They're mamish d'oraisa. I have to put them on every day. So the fact that I have to put them on, it boosts the entire system. And really, how's it boosting it? So the tefillin, we didn't talk about this last week. If we would have had time, we would have talked about it. So I'll say it now. That the only other place in the Zohar that Rashbi mentions the idea of re'uta deliba, of coming to the inner will of the heart, or the inner companionship of the heart to connect with the keter, with the atik, is in tefillin. It's the only other place that he mentions it. What's special about tefillin? Tefillin, when you think about it, is like it's like giving you a picture of the of the whole candle that we were talking about. On the one hand, it's connected to the hand, and the hand is the action. That's like the animal soul that needs to be burnt up. And in another place, it's connected to the head, and it even looks like a little bit like a candle. We've got this thing on top, and you can imagine that it's burning with a black fire. That's what's going on, and this whole thing is connected together, and it's going from the top, from above your head, all the way down to your animal soul. It's connecting the whole thing in a sort of a short circuit from the Torah, in order to be engulfed, to be encompassed, immersed inside the mitzvah. So that's why we put them on before we daven. Le'alot et nefesh ha'behemit b'tfilah, in order to raise the animal soul when davening, because the lower cannot elevate itself until there's first an awakening from above. So that's the awakening from above before the davening. The whole point of the davening is to elevate the animal soul every day before we start the day. ולכן התפילה היא נוסחה אחת בכל יום, כל ימי חייו שאדם מצווים וימי שנותן בהם 70 שנה, הם כפי ניצוצות נפש בהמית שצריכים לעלות. The davening that we say every day is a formula. Because again, it's a uniform that you wear. You don't change your uniform. You don't say, okay, today I'm going to wear a pink uniform. Tomorrow I'll wear another type of uniform. Every day you wear the same uniform, unless you rise in rank. But in the simple understanding, the uniform is always the same. And you say this and you wear this uniform every day of your life in order to elevate all the different sparks of the animal soul, meaning all the different constituents of the animal soul. Each day, something else is elevated. That's why the number of days a person lives is predetermined in a certain sense. Meaning, as long as he's carrying out the plan of his life, it's predetermined. He can do something beyond and suddenly live longer. Meaning he can gain some kind of, suddenly elevate sparks that were not in the plan. That needs to be discussed how that's done. But in any case, every day is in order to elevate, is to burn some more fuel, a particular part of the fuel of the animal soul. And every day, it's a different facet entirely of the animal soul. We think from the point of view of the animal soul, that if you're living for the animal soul, that every day is the same. You need to eat, you need to shower. It looks like to us like every single day is the same. But if you're able to concentrate on what your divine soul is burning, you suddenly realize that it's not that every day is the same at all. In fact, there's no connection between them. From the point of view of enclothement, every time that you put the uniform on, every time that you do a mitzvah, it's like a completely new reality. Even though it's always the same uniform, but your orders are always different. And they're different not because they change, but because they come from a higher place. So the higher place is always infinite. So if it's giving you the same thing, it's not because it doesn't know how to change it. It's that this day is also it's not a repetition, but it also is required, this type of work is required to elevate this particular part of your animal soul. So all these things need to be discussed with better stories and parables. Not right now. Say it another way. Every day that you light the first candle in the Channukah, it's not the same candle. The previous candle is gone. You don't carry the oil over. In fact, it's a whole question. I don't know how people solve it in the end. But do you use the oil that's left over? Let's say you don't buy the ready-made ones. You pour the oil yourself, and there's always a little bit of oil that's left in the bottom. You just pour new oil on that. So if it's really a small amount, it could be that it's just butter. It nullifies in the quantity. But there's a question about whether you should take this oil out.
Use fresh oil.
Clean the vessel. In the Mikdash, that's what they did. In the menorah and the base of Mikdash, the remnants of the oil and the wick were burnt right away. They didn't leave them for the next day. They didn't build them. Even let's say the candle went out after an hour, so there was plenty left. It was like a half a liter of oil there. So So still they would burn this oil. They wouldn't use it for the next day. וצריך להעלות גם אותו ניצוץ שמתחדש והכל יהיה העלאה אחת. מה שאין כן לימוד התורה צריך דווקא ללמוד בכל יום דבר חדש. But Torah is something else. It's not a uniform. It's an inner light. And when it comes to inner lights, there it has to be something new every day. ולכן כל המצוות נקראות, and so we'll get to Torah in a minute. In the next paragraph we'll begin to explain about Torah. This is what we're talking about is a mitzvah. How a mitzvah is a garment. How it's a uniform around you. ולכן כל המצוות, all the commandments are called tzedakah. כי צדקה תרומם גוי. Because tzedakah, there's even a description that tzedakah is like a male, what do you call it? What knights wear.
Chainmail
Yeah, chainmail. It's called the sirion.
or plate mail. What kind of mail?
The one that's made out of small
Chain
pieces.
mail.
What's the idea? That every time that you give a coin, it's another piece
All right.
of what you're wearing. It's that type of garment. But it's still one garment. Every day you're contributing it. You need every single piece of them. But in the end, you're building one garment. Why is it called? Because tzedakah has a protective quality to it. So it's described like it's chainmail. ולכן כל המצוות נקראות בשם צדקה. They're all called tzedakah in the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says that the mitzvah is tzedakah. It's not mitzvah, it's tzedakah. It's to give charity. כי צדקה תרומם גוי, because like the Tanakh says, in the Bible we find this verse, that tzedakah elevates the goy. Who's the goy? The goy in me, my animal soul. Every person has a goy inside. Whether you're a Jew or not, you still have a goy inside. Even a goy has a goy inside. There's a simple thing. People think goy is a derogatory term. Goy literally means a body. Gviyah. The word in Hebrew is gviyah. So it means my physical aspect, my animal aspect. Everybody has one. So to elevate that, you do a mitzvah. Because it burns the oil, it burns the body, and he uses it for a higher cause. שעל-ידי הצדקה וחסד שעושים למטה לחיות רוח שפלים ואני חשוב כמת, כן ביותר מכן אין קץ נמשך רוח חיים מלמעלה. This is the other side. Hashem awakens you by giving you the commandment. And when you use your fat, your bodily possessions to do the mitzvah, and you elevate higher, so it also causes another coming down, another descent from above of new energy. And this energy is mamash called Tchias HaMesim. מחיה החיים ברוך הוא להחיות מתים ממש, ובנת ימינו מקרבת, וימינו תחבקני ממש באור מקיף שמלמעלה לרומם ולהעלות את הנפש למעלה מעלה באור אינסוף ממש ממש, וזהו עניין נר מצווה. Why is it called Tchias HaMesim? Why is it calling this resurrection of the dead? Because the body in and of itself is dead. The animal soul by itself is dead. And what it does is that the second descent of light from above, when a person does a mitzvah, it transforms, it begins to transform from dead into alive the animal soul. Meaning that the animal soul begins to have a sense of godliness. It begins to have a life force coming from above, flowing through it. Why is this called Tchiyat HaMetim? Tchiyat HaMetim is really a paradox. What are you saying? You're saying in Hebrew, in English, you say resurrection of the dead. So it's very close, the same idea. Are they alive or are they dead? So
Is it before and after?
So if it's before and after, it just went through a transfer. But no, the whole point is that you're taking death and you're able to make it alive. That's why it's a paradoxical state. So you've already tasted death. Once you've tasted death, nothing's ever the same. But nonetheless, you're animated, you're alive. So you're not a zombie, but rather what's happening here is that the animal soul, which is normally dead in the sense of its appreciation of godliness, now begins to, even though it doesn't appreciate godliness, it's flowing with this appreciation of godliness that goes to the divine soul. Meaning it's been transformed. It's become in and of itself already demanding godliness. We just had this in the Daf Yomi actually 2 days ago. that he talks about, he began to talk about the donkey of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. Well, even though he's a donkey, he's completely an animal soul, but he can't eat hay that wasn't tithed. It didn't go through Meiser. He couldn't eat it. But he's an animal, how does he know? He says, no, he doesn't know in the regular sense, but he's had some kind of tchiyas amesim. He's had some kind of addition to his consciousness, which again is in his world. It's not really an appreciation of the divine because it's not that high, but in his world, the hay that's not been properly prepared according to Torah, so it doesn't look to him like he can eat it. It looks to him like it's not good, like it's spoiled. He won't eat it. So it's still hay for him. He doesn't see the divine in it. He doesn't know what the reason is.
He just can't connect with it.
But he becomes, in some sense, instinctually aware of the fact that this is not fit for eating. And again, it's in his terms. I don't know how a donkey thinks about it. So the same thing happens to a person. That at some level, his animal soul begins to act in a certain way that it can't do certain things, or it's drawn to certain things that before it wasn't there. So you could call it a question of habit, that he's been habituated this way. So in some way...
Refined.
In some way, the habits also refine him. It doesn't just stay the same. So all this is about a mitzvah. So the mitzvah now we see is also just like a candle. Achatorah or, but now we come to Torah, because the other half of the pasuk said, Kinev mitzvah b'Torah or, that mitzvah is like a candle, and Torah is like light. So what is Torah? Torah hu hamshachato ensobohu milemala lemata. Torah is something entirely different. It's not elevating the animal soul. It's bringing down the light of the infinite. V'hi or v'gilui or ensobohu mamash lemala mala mishtalshalut. And the point here of saying descent is not descending through levels. Rather, like he says here, it's a revelation. Really what it means is that here, where you are right now, the light of the infinite is revealed and it's not connected to descent, meaning the light is not diminished. When we say that it goes through a descent through levels, it's called ishtalshelus, what we're saying is that at each level the light has to diminish in order to fit the vessels at the lower level. So, when a person reads Chumash, when I read Chumash, and the Gra reads Chumash, so obviously we don't understand the same way. He has much more understanding than I have. But the problem is not with the Chumash. The problem is with my vessels being able to accept this light. So what happens is that the Chumash stays the same. It's always a revelation of the infinite, and it all depends on how much I can take from it. But it's revealed here in this world right now. I hold this thing here, and here I have a piece of the infinite. What can I get from it? That already depends on my vessels. But it did not go through a contraction. It did not go through a diminishing to get here. It's here in its
entirety,
in its full form, with all its energy. That's how the ishtalshelus works. That at every level, it's a different reality. But the Torah, it's the revelation of light out of darkness, completely. And from the deepest part of reality, wherever it is, Torah is still the same there, doesn't change. And this is a completely different level of revelation that appears in the world. It's something that's beyond the world. כלומר, כשם שאני ראשון קודם שנברא העולם, ואחרון לאחר שנברא העולם. כן מבלעדיי, דהיינו באמצעות, בשעת בריאת העולם יהיה אור אינסוף ברוך הוא נמשך למטה, שיהיה ביטול העולם במציאות, כמו קודם שנברא ואחר שנברא, והיינו על ידי התורה, כי אורייתא מחוכמה נפק. So the whole point of the Torah is that when a person is learning Torah, he can come to an appreciation of the infinite in its raw form, as it is. without any regard to what the world reveals or doesn't reveal. The Torah is like some kind of extraterrestrial artifact. It's here from a different world. It's like it came from somewhere else. It's not meant to be a garment. It's not meant to change before we said our actions. I don't want to say it doesn't change your actions. Of course it does, because it has a mitzvah quality to it. But the Torah in and of itself, even when I don't learn it in order to extract the mitzvah, just to connect with the Torah, sort of like how a person dances with the Torah on Simchas Torah. So that level of connection is to connect to the infinite directly.
Mm-hmm.
Except that, like we said, our vessels can't take everything in at the same time. So depending on where we're holding, that's how much of the light is revealed to us. But everything is here inside the Torah at every single moment. It's not that it goes through a change. That the Torah, even though it comes from Chokhmah, and Chokhmah is a sense of the infinite, so still Hashem created it to come down into this world. And when it comes down into this world, again, it's revealed to different people depending on what level they are. So Kavod b'Gematria Lamed Bet and Lamed Bet Mitibot Chokhmah. That first of all, there's the 32 pathways of Chokhmah. All this needs a lot of explanation, but I want to get to the point here. The Talmud is what we call Bria. It's the level of understanding Torah at the intellectual level. Yetzotiv, the form, the world of formation, is the Mishnah. And the Psukim themselves, in the Chumash, the Tanakh, Mikra, that's called the world of Asiyah. And yet, even though it's divided into worlds, it's not that the Torah itself is somehow divided. It's rather that, again, it's from our ability to perceive what's going on. So there's different levels. But in any one of them, the infinite is revealed. Okay, so I think עוד כמה דקות. עוד כמה דקות. Okay, so maybe we'll stop here and
Coming to television now.